Hi there, in this episode we're going to compare different forms of government. Now all governments need to organize how they're going to share power. There's three different types of powers within government. The power to make laws, legislative power, the power to enforce laws, executive power, and the power to interpret laws through the courts, judicial power. Now, it all depends on a multiple array of things, how a nation establishes its government. Part of its history and culture, it could be beliefs, geography, location, how it deals with other nations, international relations, all kinds of different things shape what a government looks like. Now, the first type of government we're going to look at is democracy. A democracy just means rule by the people. There's different forms of democracy, though. The first type is a direct democracy. This is where citizens vote on everything. And it dates back all the way to ancient Greece. When I mean they vote on everything, I mean everything. If we had a direct democracy today, here in Palm Bay, people would have to take off work to go vote on whether or not we're going to fill a pothole. You can see where that might be a problem. It wasn't a huge problem for the Greeks, though, because they limited who actually got to be a citizen. As you see in the drawing, all you see are some white men. They limited who got to vote by limiting who was a citizen. Of course, here in America, we have citizenship rights extended to vast more people. And because of that, direct democracy is kind of burdensome in the modern day. So what we do instead is we practice direct democracy through what's called an initiative. This is where citizens can create a proposal, an idea for a law, and put it on the ballot. And then if the majority of people vote for it, it becomes law. There are some small countries out there that still use the direct democracy for pretty much everything. Switzerland is such a case. But Switzerland is very, very small compared to the United States. Here in the U.S., we do use it mostly at a state level, and we use it for referendums. A referendum is when all the people vote on an idea that's been put on the ballot. So during the election, you're voting for elected officials, but you're also voting on a different topic. Usually an amendment or a change to our state constitution. It's a way that people can accept or reject certain ideas. One such example is the idea of medical marijuana. Should the state of Florida legalize it? That was a referendum that was recently brought up here in the state. With time, people realized in the ancient world that direct democracy is kind of cumbersome. By the time we get to the ancient Romans, they have a new form of democracy, a representative democracy, also known as a republic. It's pretty much the same thing. This is what we have here in the U.S. today. You say it every day in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. So what a republic is this idea that instead of voting on every single little detail, we vote for representatives, politicians. And those politicians are supposed to make decisions on our behalf. Now, in representative democracies, more people are citizens and we have much more people that get to vote. The government's power, in turn, is limited by a constitution. Now, let's flip this around. We talked about democracy. Pretty much the opposite of that is autocracy. Autocracy is a form of government where we only have one person, and that person has unlimited power. There's several different forms of autocracy. One is a dictatorship, where usually it's a military leader who's secured power, usually through violent means. They use what might be called a coup d'etat, which is a military takeover. Sometimes they can be elected. That's what happened with Hitler. He was actually democratically elected to be Chancellor of Germany. Once he was in office, though, he took over and made himself dictator. So there's several ways that an autocracy can be formed. Next up is socialism. In a socialist form of government, it's more about economics. It's about property and resources. With socialism, property and resources are owned and controlled by the government. The idea is to share. Everybody would be equal. Basically, what happens is the government takes an active role in the economy and is responsible for a lot of the economic planning. Now, this is true socialism. Socialism has kind of changed and warped over the years. Socialism is in play in most of Europe and in Canada. In Canada, socialism manifests itself as a single-payer health insurance system. What this means is that the health system is all controlled by the government. And instead of having medical bills, the government covers all those expenses. Now, related to socialism is communism. And this is a form of government where all property is owned by the community as a whole, and where people are entitled to equal social and economic status. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels are the fathers of communism. And they basically said that all the war, all the fighting, everything that we've seen in history has been caused by class struggles, rich people versus poor people. And their idea was to minimize this class struggle, this fighting, because everybody would be seen equal. You wouldn't have rich and poor. Everybody would be the same. Okay, next up is a monarchy. This is when power is held by a single person, and it's based on the rule by birth, so a king or a queen. And they keep that power for their entire life. After their death, their children inherit the crown. Now, the power of monarchies vary from one to another. There's an absolute monarchy, which is actually a form of autocracy. In an absolute monarchy, the king or queen's rule is law. Now, in the Middle Ages in Europe, those absolute monarchs used what was called the divine right of kings. And they basically said they got to be the boss because God said so. And who were you to question the word of God? With time, though, many of the monarchies of Europe have turned into constitutional monarchies. This is where there's a constitution that has limited the rule of the monarch, the king or the queen, and oftentimes has provided democracy to the people. So they actually get to vote on laws, and the king and queen become basically just a symbol. That's what's happened in England. So those two types of monarchies are absolute and constitutional. We have an absolute monarchy where the king has all the control, and the constitutional one where people have the right to vote. That's it for now.